Hi guys, it's Mrs. Snook. How are you today? I'm going to talk to you guys today a little bit about what is sociology and just some sociology basic information, which you can read about in Chapter 1, Section 1 of our textbook. Now, if you were in class last week, we started talking about it on the first day of class. We did a couple of slides and notes. So this is going to continue off of the notes from last week. So it's just going to be a continuation. For my remote learners out there who are purely remote for the entire quarter, entire semester, whatever it is, you'll just want to start here at the beginning and open up your notebook and start to take notes along with us because you can use these notes on the quiz and test. And for those of you who've already started taking these notes, I'm okay with if you want to fast forward in the video until I get to that slide where we left off so you can kind of continue your notes so we can finish this part of the notes today. Now, today our focus really is just on what is sociology? What is this class that you're in? How does it relate to social problems and empathy, especially in the problems that are occurring in our world today related to all sorts of world issues from racism to discrimination to poverty, and of course to COVID-19. And just ultimately, how is it going to really impact you and around the world around you? So what we're talking about here is what is sociology? What is a social problem? Now, sociology is what we consider a social science. So it is similar to your science classes because it does use data. And we're going to talk a lot more about that as we get to the last section of Chapter 1, where we talk about how social scientists don't just come up with these theories, without having any evidence to back it up. They're going to do what we call qualitative research versus quantitative research, meaning observational research, where they kind of count how many times an occurrence occurs, especially if they were observing like our classroom, if we were actually in class, compared to quantitative research where they tabulate like survey results more so. And they have people take a survey like I had you guys do on the first day of class, and then you kind of let me know, your feelings, your responses, how you learned best, etc. Now, so sociology is a type of science in a sense, but it is a social science. It's focused on society. It's focused on social life, specifically on social change. And sociologists, and we're going to talk more in section 2 about the first sociologist, Auguste Comte, and how he was really concerned about the problems that he was seeing around him in France and how he wanted to make the world around him a better place. And sociologists realize that there are problems and they want to improve society because of those problems. Some sociologists are kind of more accepting of those problems, saying that they kind of hold a purpose, but for the most part, they're analyzing them because they want to help people. They want to make the world a better place. Now, sociology does focus on you because it focuses on what is your behavior in our society. Why do you do the things that you do? Now, sociology is different than like psychology. Okay, you've probably heard of psychology before, because sociology and psychology are slightly different because of their major focus. Psychology is focused on really you personally and your experiences going back to your childhood and how you were raised, your family patterns. It focuses more so on your brain. It focuses on mental health. Sociology focuses on the group as a whole. So yes, people are all experiencing problems, but if you take a problem like unemployment, psychology may focus on perhaps that person is now unemployed because of their drinking problem at work. Sociology looks at group patterns, and they might say perhaps people are unemployed in general because the education that they received was inadequate, the training that they received was inadequate, because there's a recession going on and there's no jobs available. But ultimately, sociology really focuses on the social problems, the issues which are negatively affecting individual people and society as a whole. And they really are trying to make the world a better place by bringing light to these issues. Some of them have more of a positive outlook on the world, and they see that glass as half full. And other people kind of have that more of a negative outlook, where they're kind of more on the pessimistic side, and they see that glass as half empty. There's different theoretical perspectives, as we call them. Some kind of realize that some things might not be possible to truly be changed. Perhaps they even serve some purpose, even if they hurt others. But their ultimate goal is still to improve our society. Whoop, went the wrong way. Now, when it comes to our society, I've got an image here of our society from The Simpsons, some of the classic characters. I don't know how many of you out there are Simpson fans. I've watched The Simpsons for years. I don't watch it now. It's not like I tune in every week. But I still am amazed by the Simpsons, especially because, as the years have gone by, they've talked about all these things which at the time seemed, oh, that's crazy, that'll never happen. And then it basically has happened. But I've watched it for years now and I enjoy it. Now, these are, of course, all some of the characters in The Simpsons as part of the town of Springfield. And a society itself is when you've got a large group that comes together. The key here is that they live in some kind of geographical territory. So you can find specifically where they live on a map. There is some kind of region with boundaries, etc. And there's some kind of political authority, whether it's, a democracy where the people, are in charge, or it's a monarchy where you have some kind of king. And ultimately, there is some kind of expectations about how to behave, about how to treat others, and it's all part of their culture. And so there are norms, is what we call them, as far as how you're supposed to behave in certain situations. And if you don't, people would view you as purely abnormal. And it is the sociologist's job to look at that society's social problems and try to improve them. A lot of societies have similar social problems in terms of perhaps poverty, in terms of improving education, perhaps it's women's rights. But some societies more than others have different problems. For example, in the United States today, we have obesity as a problem. You're not going to find that as a problem and poor eating habits compared to some other countries, which of course are starving. So, what the social problems are as far as a group of people, they can definitely vary depending on their cultural norms, their expectations, their wealth level, many different characteristics. So I think this is where we left off in our notes. So those of you guys who were there, last week, it's time for you guys to pick up your pen and paper and to start writing again to finish off your notes, because remember, you can use your notes on your quizzes and your test. I don't foresee a quiz till probably next week, whether we're in person or virtual, and then probably not a test until, I'm thinking maybe like the 11th of September, if not maybe like a class period or two later. It's kind of hard to judge at the moment. I'm going to try to take a look at that today, but it's kind of hard to judge because block scheduling and everything takes a little bit longer than we're used to. And we're doing very different assignments this year because sociology, for the most part, is a class that is composed of a lot of group work, and we can't really do a lot of that. So things are very different this year. But anyway, sociology contributes to our understanding of social problems because it is really looking at that relationship between an individual person, but more so groups of people and society. And it's trying to figure out, how did this problem develop? Is this a problem for multiple people? Was society not providing for that group? So for example, we look at a group perhaps like our veterans, when we look at something like, veteran suicides, did we not provide that group of people enough emotional, mental health upon returning or upon leaving duty? Is perhaps that why they led to, alcohol abuse or suicide or mental health issues or homelessness? There's a lot of issues that we know veterans who've seen combat and suffer from PTSD end up suffering from a lot of these problems. So sociologists realize that, okay, the problem is that perhaps many vets, commit suicide or suffer from poor mental health post-combat. So they look at what was the military doing in terms of a social structure to provide these people with the support that they need. And of course, they would collect data. It's a very systematic, scientific approach to try to figure out what's happening. And then they can go about and try to figure out what's the next steps to take to try to help this particular group of people in our society. So what I keep harping on here is that when it comes to sociology compared to psychology or any of the other social sciences, because there are many other social sciences, and I'll kind of mention this in next lesson as we continue doing notes on chapter 1, section 1. But there's, of course, history and psychology and sociology and political science and geography and anthropology. These are all different social sciences, basically social studies classes that you could take, of course, in high school or in college. We don't offer all of them, unfortunately. But when it comes to psychology, which focuses on an individual person and what their life story is and the choices they've made and how it's impacted them, and of course, different signals in the brain in terms of neurotransmitters and brain activity. Sociology is focused on the group. What factors have shaped their behavior, have molded this individual? What kind of events have impacted their life? And you might say, oh, what if somebody's, off in the country, out on their own, totally isolated? Well, are they totally isolated? Can you ever be truly isolated from society? You still are living with whatever tools society has given you. Even if you're thinking about a specific group, like let's say, the Amish, they've still created their own specific society of sports. Maybe not a true society because they don't really have a geographic boundary or territory, but it is their own culture with their own expectations, with their own limitations that they've given themselves about what tools they can use and such. And so they are molding the behavior of their next generation as they have children and shaping what they can and cannot do and what they are connected to or not connected to. So every time that you watch something, that you ride a bike, that you play a specific sport, that you watch TV, you are connecting with some aspect of our culture, and it's impacting you over time and changing who you are. And of course, as major events happen, COVID-19, whether it is, it was 9/11 or anything like that, a specific war, if you think back to people who've lived through Vietnam War and World War I, World War II, those major life events, of course, not only impacted them personally, but impacted their entire generation in terms of the sacrifices they make. This is a really hard time for everyone, especially for you guys who are seniors out there. But even for, you guys who are juniors listening to this, it's impacted, at this point, the second year of your high school career. And this will be something that perhaps forever changes us. I don't know, I might be a crazy old lady for the rest of my life who hand sanitizes constantly and is a germaphobe. It's hard to see what the long-term impacts will be on a group of people after experiencing an event. Now, as far as what do sociologists study, I was trying to play with there you go. As far as what do sociologists study, they study socialization. So that's the process of learning how to participate in our culture, our society, basically the norms or the ways of behaving that we teach children. So, we teach children from the time that they're about 2 on, okay, it's time to potty train. So you have to explain to a child, how do you use a potty? Obviously, how our bathroom procedures in the United States are very different. I think we saw that with this whole toilet paper debacle of 2020. Other cultures, have bidets and don't use as much toilet paper, or there's a hole in the ground. So just that's a whole procedure in itself. Do you raise your hand in class? Do you yell out loud? Do you tip a waiter? Okay, these are all different procedures that you learn as you participate in our society. So you are getting socialized by your parents, by your friends, by your media. We're going to talk a little bit about that in this class. We'll also talk about crime. Okay, so why do people commit the crimes that they do? And what should we do to those people who are rule breakers? So we're going to talk a little bit about crime and deviant behavior. At the very end of the semester, if we have time, first semester always seems to be a little bit shorter than second semester, we talk about race, ethnicity, gender, and social stratification, meaning just inequality in general when it comes to gender, when it comes to race, when it comes to economic differences of social classes. We'll definitely talk about family in this class. We don't usually talk a ton about religion. It's kind of more of a free choice project. We talk a little bit about cults at one point. And then we'll talk a little bit about politics, population, urbanization. So our first unit of study here is just the basics. Honestly, kids tend to find this first unit kind of the most boring because it's just kind of, what is it? The second unit is really interesting, I think. I love it. Most kids find it interesting as far as culture and looking at American culture and researching other cultures around the globe. Then we'll move to socialization and family and gender. And then after that, we'll move to adolescence and talking about things that are specifically going on in your teenage years. Then we'll move to crime and deviance. And then if we have any time at the end, we'll more so do the race, social stratification, inequality. And like I said, like religion, politics, urbanization, sports, all those are kind of more free choice projects that we kind of fit in here and there. And we'll also learn a lot about famous studies that have happened over time that have impacted people. As far as why people should study sociology really has the ability to help people understand, what other people are going through. It's really all about empathy. Max Weber, the sociologist, first talked about this concept of Verstehen. And as you watch the Ed Puzzle video of Crash Course, What is Sociology? She pronounces the name much better. But ultimately, when you hear Max Weber talking about this Verstehen, which my German is not awesome, I took Spanish. It's the idea that you can walk in somebody else's shoes. You can understand that the problems that they're feeling. You're trying to gain a different perspective, which is what we call the sociological perspective. You're trying to use your imagination to try to understand what issues they're facing and how it's impacted their life. So sociology helps us to understand what are the problems, okay, facing our society. How has it impacted people? Because a lot of the time we're just very ignoring of issues, and we'll be like, oh, that's so sad. Yep, we know a lot of people are poor. Poverty's bad. And then we just move on. The goal of sociology is to try to help you gain some of that empathy and to really, understand this is a true problem. This is how it's impacting a specific group. If you had to walk a day in their shoes, it would be a very difficult procedure. And so for the most part, it helps people really try to focus on social change. Now, some people go on to actually gain a sociology degree. There's nothing really for you to write down on this slide, so there's nothing really to worry about here. But people who go ahead and get a degree in sociology, they could have all sorts of jobs, from being like a sociologist, maybe working in a prison like a probation officer, maybe being some kind of writer, maybe being a social worker, maybe working for like DCFS as far as like child and protective services, some kind of work in healthcare. So there's lots of different things that they can do, but for the most part, many sociology jobs, you have to go on to get a master's degree. Psychology is the same way. There's very little that you can do with a psychology or sociology just bachelor's degree. You usually have to go on for 2 more years of schooling to get a master's, and then you'll make a lot more money. Now, when it comes to sociology, I keep saying this, we're almost done with notes here, guys, is that empathy, okay, is the key part of sociology. And empathy is this idea that you're really trying to understand or experience, what another person is thinking or feeling. You're trying to see the world, from their perspective. We're going to talk a lot next class about perspective. And in reality, it's all about placing yourself in their shoes, trying to feel what they're feeling, trying to understand that every person has a story, even if it's not really possible for you to relate to. And empathy is incredibly important because, if you can just try just for a minute to relate to someone who has all of these emotional or physical problems in their lives, you're going to, hopefully it's going to connect to your heart, and you're going to want to reach out and you're going to want to help. So, whatever it is that they're dealing with, hopefully you're going to want to donate your time or money or get them the help that they need. And it really is one of those things like, for example, if you see someone who's homeless on the street, what's your immediate reaction? I'll be honest, growing up in Chicago, my immediate reaction was not empathy. And my parents are what I've always thought of as good Christians. And we would donate money to the church. We would donate, food to people in our community. I can remember like working at the soup kitchen growing up and making like food baskets and taking them to people's homes. But man, once we would go to downtown Chicago, it's like my parents would turn into totally different people. There was no empathy whatsoever. They were just like, well, all these people are con artists. They're all drunk. They're just going to use any money you give them. Don't even bother. And so I had a very skewed view, at least growing up, when it came to empathy, that, okay, I'm going to be empathetic to some people in my community, especially if they have children, but that empathy towards homeless people downtown, I didn't really have any. It was definitely non-existent. I think that I only started to change my views once I got into my later high school years. And I can remember my boyfriend at the time, he went ahead and he packed like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and he passed them out to like homeless people on the street who kept begging us for money. So that kind of opened up my view that, wait a minute, not everybody has this view of this is how you deal with problems, or this is how you deal with, a situation. You don't just drive faster when you see a homeless person. You don't just turn your head necessarily and keep walking. That perhaps you give them a sandwich because they might be starving. So that's actually, I believe, our last slide of notes. I think this one is just, you don't have to write this one down either. It's just we need empathy to collaborate successfully, solve problems, drive change, align interests, make good decisions, lead effectively. So that's actually our last slide of notes, but I wanted to go back and I wanted to play this, or I guess I'll just attach this video clip. It's a pretty good one about this every life has a story. And just to kind of getting you to remember that everybody has their own problems to deal with. So I'll just kind of attach that link with these notes so that you can watch that on your own if you want. If you've got any questions about these notes, guys, let me know. But we do have a Google Meet later today. It's optional. You don't have to attend. I scheduled it for 2:30. I wasn't sure how much you guys were really going to get out of bed early, and it was like super short notice. The school was just asking that we try to touch base with you guys to see if you had any questions. The Google Meet is for all kids, for remote learners, and for you guys who are in class. I have no idea if we're in class tomorrow or not. I literally get the phone calls and the information like the same time you guys do. So I don't know anything, but I'm assuming we'll be back in class tomorrow, but I don't know. Don't quote me on anything. So, all right, let me know if you've got questions. I'll look forward to seeing you guys at the Google Meet. And don't forget, get your work done for that Chapter 1 vocab list that's due Monday and the Ed puzzle that's due Thursday. And don't forget, Flipgrid's due today. Later.